Okay, welcome to the final
It says
lecture.
my internet connection is unstable.
That's okay.
I've been having trouble with that. If I get lost, I'll try to come back as soon as I can.
Don't worry about that. We'll take care of it. So, welcome to the final lecture, and Robert Wilkinson has joined me. Thanks, Mr. Wilkinson, for joining. And this is also one of the most, exciting and also the most awaited topic at this point of time. With we are already at the brink of the Grand Conjunction, and you already wrote an article about the Grand Mutation for the previous issue of the magazine, which was for March and April. So, sorry, May, June. So, I'm sure this lecture is going to be very, very relevant to the current situation and also the next 2 or 2.5 years henceforth. So, thank you so much.
Well, first, let me thank everyone who participated in the very first 2019 Celestial Vibes Astrological Symposium. We've had the world come together in this forum, with many good ideas exchanged and many good connections made. I particularly want to thank you, Ashwin, because you've made a heroic effort to pull something of this magnitude together. I've promoted hundreds of events in my lifetime, and I can assure everybody who is present that Ashwin's put in hundreds of hours of thought and action to make this event happen. So this was a Herculean effort, and I want to thank you again, Ashwin, for creating this event and shepherding it to its completion. You brought the world together for a brief time in a global event focused on our timeless craft. That's certainly ringing a Uranian bell globally. So thank you.
Thank you so
Second,
much. So,
happy Father's
I'll
Day
be away. Yeah, happy Father's Day, and I'll be
to
away with.
everyone.
Yeah, sure, of course. My video will be off and my audio will also be muted, but I'll be around. So if you just call my name, I'll be there in another 5 or 10 seconds because the system takes about 5 seconds to kind of get back. So
Very good.
okay, thank you so much.
So, again, happy Father's Day to everyone in the world. This is a day dedicated to honoring the lives of our fathers who helped bring us into life on this earth, as well as those elder men who mentored us, cared for us, guided us, and taught us how to be spiritual adults in our world. We're all part of the human time stream, and each of us is guided and guide others in turn. Each of us had those who we admired and tried to imitate to become better people. And as we teach through our example, others are inspired to imitate our behavior as well. So happy Father's Day to all of you who have been fathers in one form or another. May your example inspire young ones everywhere. I'm happy to close this event speaking on a subject which will affect all of humanity as we stand on the threshold of a new 200-year economic, social, and spiritual period. We approach an event which has profound implications as the flashpoint to our shift out of the winter and into the spring of the 21st century, and is the harbinger of an entirely new era for humanity. Due to the position of the transpersonal spiritual planets, we've already awakened to and dreamed the preformed age of Aquarius, which continues to grow stronger by the decade. All around the world, millions are acquiring a new understanding of time, space, energy, matter, and life itself. Millions have already begun to move out of the old age mindset with its superstitions, obsolete belief systems, separateness, and fear. Millions know that life is one, and we are all eternal soul spirits having human experiences, so we can learn to bring our love, wisdom, kindness, and compassion into manifestation as our song to sing in our world. We externalize our purpose for being here by how we express our planets. And just as we learn to manage our own expression, so we also learn how to interact to our best interests in the world. These cycles are shown by the transit of Jupiter and Saturn in our charts. Every 20 years, the planet Jupiter conjuncts or comes together with the planet Saturn, ending one long cycle and beginning a new one. And every 200 years, where they come together, changes elements in the Western tropical astrology system, creating a new 200-year era to come. We now stand on the threshold of that new era. So let's explore why Jupiter conjunctions with Saturn are so important. Jupiter symbolizes the expansive principle, that which opens countless doors to greater truths, greater understanding, and a more abundant view of life's possibilities. Its Department of Labor involves the social and cultural levels of our lives and the ever-expanding promise of the future. It gives with one hand and releases with the other. It is the symbol of the ever-changing greater idea. Saturn symbolizes the structuring power of time, as it sets useful rules and boundaries to further the best possibilities over the long run, whether for individuals, social movements and norms, or nations. Its Department of Labor is the ability to form and adjust the expectations of the social cultural expansions into structures which will endure. For an individual, it symbolizes our spiritual master and spiritual friend. These two each have their own cycles, with both Jupiter and Saturn closing old eras and opening new ones, which correlate with major shifts in the world. When Jupiter and Saturn come together and occupy a similar zone in the heavens, it ends a 20-year period and begins a new one. This conjunction always opens the door to new freedom, new visions, and new truths to be structured and worked with over a 20-year span. They are said to rule social, economic affairs globally and nationally, and show us a general 20-year emphasis by where they fall in our charts. This conjunction correlates with global developments set into motion, which last until the next Jupiter and Saturn conjunction 20 years later. By looking at the sign and degree of these conjunctions, we can anticipate general themes and conditions of every level of life, which are expanded into structures, beginning with the conjunction. Now, there are other factors that do affect these conjunctions, which reveal individual social and global themes. But for now, let's begin by exploring the reason why this coming conjunction is called a grand mutation. It comes from the shift in the long-term elemental pattern. The elemental pattern. In astrology, there are 4 elements: fire, earth, air, and water. Fire represents inspiration, earth represents practicality, water represents feeling and connectedness, and air represents interrelatedness and mobility. When a conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn leads to a 180-year period of further conjunctions in only one of the elements, it is called a grand mutation. Because of these synodic cycles of Jupiter and Saturn exist for as long as those planets orbit the sun, they make conjunctions in all the signs across the centuries. In Western tropical astrology, we have seen a larger pattern created by how Jupiter and Saturn change the signs that they conjunct in across time, since they shift elements approximately every 200 years. These elemental shifts are called grand mutations and indicate a larger trend of multiple conjunctions in a given element. So in Western tropical astrology, we have had nonstop conjunctions of Jupiter and Saturn in the 3 earth signs, Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, every 20 years since 1800, except for the ending of the previous 200-year fire era with the conjunction in Aries in 1821, and to come, the anticipatory Jupiter conjunct Saturn in the air sign of Libra in 1980. And that heralded what is now coming for the next 180 years. The conjunction in 2000 was the last one in earth signs. It happened in Taurus, and it's the last one for centuries to come. The mutation in air will occur next year, 2020. Since it ushers in a series of Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions in the three air signs for almost 200 years. Okay, big picture. The 1760 conjunction was in Aries. The 1780 conjunction was in Sagittarius. That was fire. Then Earth began in 1800 when they conjuncted in Virgo. And then the next conjunction in 1821 in Aries ended the fire era. Just by way of measurement, the next fire era, the next fire conjunction, doesn't occur until 2338. So that's the grand cycle of Jupiter and Saturn. It shows it's a little bit over 500 years because, for example, our Earth era conjunctions ended in 2000, and the next conjunction in Earth signs will be 2577. So the cycle is definitely well over 500 years. So the 17th and 18th centuries were dominated by the inspirational and inflamed fire element, with a transition period between 1800 and 1841 of introducing the Earth and saying goodbye to the old ways of the previous 200 years. 1841, the conjunction was in Capricorn, 1861 in Virgo, 1881 in Taurus, 1901 it was in Capricorn, 1921 it was in Virgo, 1940-41 it was in Taurus, 1961 it was in Capricorn, 1980-81 was in Libra, and then this last one, year 2000, in Taurus. So Earth is the material element. And it's easy to see that pretty much since 1800, we've been in an era of mercantilism, of exploitive colonialism, of wars to feed national war machines, leading the world to worship of money and all that money can buy. Money's really taken on its own mythology this last 220 years. Money used to be considered a whole different thing than what it's become, because now it's an abstraction that somehow verifies worth for its own sake rather than the internal, it's the external. So I think that humanity began to unground from this material focus between 1980 and 2000. And the past 40 years have been preparing us for a long-term occupancy with a focus on the air element. We also have to say goodbye to the world that existed before 1980, because this one we are casting off into an unknown zone. So we now begin long-term air conjunctions. 2020 in Aquarius, 2040 in Libra, 2060 in Gemini, 2080 in Aquarius, 2100 in Libra, 2120 in Gemini, 2140 in Aquarius. In 2160, the conjunction is in anticipatory watery Scorpio. In 2179, it returns to airy Gemini. In 2199, it's in Aquarius. So we have a historical anomaly because we have two conjunctions in air before we begin the 200-year water era. Ordinarily, these shifts only occur in the next to the last conjunction of the 20-year cycle of the 10 Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions. So water begins 2219 with Scorpio, 2238-39 in Cancer, 2259 in Pisces. So there is a pattern to the long-term elemental shifts. As each element period is approximately 200 years, it involves 10 Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions. Again, except for historical anomalies, the next to the last conjunction in any element always falls in the element to come 40 years later. That conjunction to come 40 years later is called a Grand Mutation. So the conjunction in earthy Virgo anticipated the era now ending. With the last conjunction of the old fire era, the 17th and 18th centuries, that ended between 1821 and 1840. So just like the conjunction in Libra in 1980 anticipated the era now coming in 2020. So again, sometimes there are two conjunctions in the old sign following the new element conjunction. And perhaps we can see historically that that gives a longer closure period to the old era. In any case, we're at the end of an old evolutionary track related to the larger social economic cycles across the centuries. This ends the long series of conjunctions in practical materialistic Earth, and we now enter the lighter, more open and mobile element of air, which will last until the water conjunction in Scorpio in 2160. So what does this shift mean? Why should we care about the shift in elements? Well, I think that the shift in elements means that a 180-year era of social and cultural obsession with materialism is soon to be over, with a new era of 180 years to be dominated by the air element. So ideas, relatedness, interaction, the curiosity that helps us look for information and weigh and judge and balance and do our sequence and selection and compare and contrast as per all the air element qualities, and then synthesize it into a grand vision of the greatest good for the greatest number in Aquarius. And we're told that we have a new era, age of Aquarius. We don't know if it's begun. We don't know if it's yet to begun. We don't know if it's happening now. I write about this quite a bit. I think that it's a long wave transition period. And I think we are in the heart of the long wave transition period. We are right on the edge of the end of the old age of Pisces. And this conjunction in Aquarius heralds the new age that will become clearer and stronger as the decades roll on in the 21st century. So because this is 180 years, okay? And we're not really going to talk about what's happening in the next era because none of us will be alive at that time unless you accept the concept of reincarnation, in which case then we will take care of Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions in water when we're all back here together at that time. Now, because the Jupiter-Saturn cycle is the primary marker to understand the 20-year general social, cultural, economic focus, they show us the general themes of the decades to come. Their historical lens on prior times, which can help us anticipate what is to come. All right, so let's do a little thought exercise here. And remember, wherever it falls in our charts is where our particular focus is, but also the general position it's in. It would make a great study for any history students out there of astrology because it will show general 20-year themes across the decades of history. So, for example, Virgo themes dominated the 20s and 30s. Taurus themes dominated the 40s and 50s. Capricorn themes played out in the 60s and 70s. And then we shifted to Libra, so they were the themes of the 80s and 90s. And then Taurus themes have been playing out these past 20 years. As an aside, given the Taurus influence, it would seem that the past 20 years would have some things in common with the previous Taurus 20-year period in the World War II and Cold War 20-year era. And I'd say that this is definitely borne out by global events in terms of war, in terms of just the entire clash of authoritarianism. So besides the movement of nations, societies, and cultures during these cycles, the house where Jupiter and Saturn conjunct in our map gives us a new beginning in that social and cultural focus in our lives. Where they transit our charts are areas where we see opportunity and power in our long-term social expression. So Jupiter and Saturn represent gateways to personal recognition and liberation from oppressive conditions. Once we learn how to be the positive function of each of these rather than play to the negatives. Each of the planets has a duality of healthy function versus dysfunction. And Jupiter and Saturn help us work through healthy ways of expressing all the other more personal planetary traits. Since Jupiter and Saturn represent the part of us where our imagination hits its limit and either lives within the boundaries or breaks on through into unknown truths and vistas. Jupiter teaches us how we are grasping circumstances with either desperation and neediness or abundance and generosity. Saturn teaches us how we are enslaved by ideas or circumstances, or taking command of our destiny and fulfilling our life purpose. When they conjunct in our charts, we are shown a new set of life opportunities and responsibilities in the house they occupy. So, for example, if you want to see how the larger social cultural cycles played out in your life, look to the 1980-81 conjunctions at 5 degrees, 9 degrees, and 10 degrees of Libra for a guide to the larger themes of your life between 1980 and 2000. Wherever the 5, 9, and 10 Libra fell, that was your general social cultural focus, your general understanding of how to weigh and judge and come to a higher truth, maybe a higher archetypal function between 1980 and 2000. And then you can look to the conjunction in the year 2000 at 23 Taurus to understand how the larger Taurus forces in the world pulled you into an expanded maturity and personal authorship and effectiveness since then in the area that you have 23 Taurus. Again, this is the Western tropical system, but it doesn't matter. These conjunctions are occurring and they're falling in your house somewhere, regardless of what sign you call it to be in. I just happen to be a Western tropical astrologer, and this is what we're talking about, the sequence of these remarkable conjunctions in a single element across the centuries. So the coming conjunction of 1 Aquarius ushers in an entirely new era for 200 years to come. We'll no longer be working off of the abstract ideals of the 80s and 90s, nor the stubborn intransigence, greed, and banking dominance of the period between 2000 and 2020. Again, Aquarius is the sign that aspires toward an ideal of the greatest good for the greatest number. It is the sign which wants to make a greater contribution to society. Wherever we have it is where we want to make a greater contribution. Aquarius manages group time, group energy, group resources to achieve a goal. It synthesizes, it's interactive, and as a fixed sign, it's just as stubborn as Taurus, but much less attached to material references. In astrology, we have an interesting thing called the Sabian symbols. The Sabian symbols were created almost 100 years ago by the spiritual master astrologer, Dr. Mark Edmund Jones. The Sabian symbols reveal an intricate internal structure of our 360 phase reality we move through our entire lives. Each degree of the zodiac has a symbol, and in it we find how any given phase of experience relates to every other phase, as well as the whole cycle of experience. The Sabian symbol for 1 Aquarius, which is where the conjunction will fall, is an old Adobe mission. Now, Dr. Jones, I met him on several occasions. He says, don't take these literally. I've found that sometimes they work more literally than others, but as with all symbols, you have to take them as an abstract archetypal form that could be interpreted, realized, and manifested in any one of 10,000 ways. So a symbol is a symbol. How it externalizes is entirely up to the creative intelligence that participates in building whatever, from a personality to a nation. So the Sabian symbol for 1 Aquarius is an old Adobe mission. And in the original Mark Jones class notes from that Rujar, the great philosopher, venerable philosopher, astrologer, Dane Rujar, published in his masterwork, The Astrology of Personality, he, in the notes, he said, this is a degree of the mastery over environment while being an integral part of it, and recognition of established values. And in his astrological mandala, Rujar states it symbolizes the power inherent in all great human works to endure far beyond the worker's lifespan, and offers it's about spiritualized idealistic, creative social forces at work, putting the focus on the enduring character of human achievements, ensouled by a great vision. He says this symbol calls us to project a noble ideal into concrete forms of beauty and significance, offering others the opportunity to reach a higher, more organized and productive level of activity. We are told this degree represents the concretization of an ideal. Dr. Jones, the spiritual astrologer who guided the concretization of these symbols, says this is a degree of sustainment with the need for a larger orientation and enduring ties, which we must neither neglect nor underrate, which call us to remember our own true state of being. He offers us the key word durability and says that when operating in a positive manner, this degree is effective breadth of vision and a respect-compelling depth of character. As you can imagine, if this is what sounds the tone for the next 20 years, very powerful, very important theme, because it indicates the influence of the conjunctions theme of 2020 to 2040 involves some kind of work done with others that concretizes a noble ideal or some kind of spiritual touchstone which will outlive us. Here we take the light of seeing a greater contribution and live it out in a new dedication for the future. It's a symbol of people coming together to build something which transforms the landscape and is a place of many meanings and uses. I'd say the environmental forces already set into motion in our world will require a lot of Aquarian cooperative work, synthesizing many skills and approaches to deal with the multi-level problems already happening, as well as those yet to happen. Aquarius is a focus on a vision of a greater contribution to a better world through good management of collective resources. Aquarius envisions a better world and coordinates events for a greater good for all people as well as the whole of society. So could the end of the Earth era yield a retreat from blind materialism, and an opening of the air era yield advances in understanding with an openness to new ideas and discoveries, sharing the information between the parts of the whole to bring forth the best group results? Could an understanding of our mobility and interrelatedness create a new way of regarding each other, the Earth, the larger unified field of life itself? We have been told these are the qualities of the emerging age of Aquarius. So I will conclude by saying individually and collectively, we stand on the threshold of a radical new era. Even though we are immersed in the world resulting from times past, at crucial moments, the world makes an evolutionary leap into a totally new frame of reference. That's why, for the longest time, I've told you that we should not be thinking in terms of survival of the fittest. We should be thinking in terms of survival of those who learn to think in the future. Because as we learn to think in the future, we anticipate what is already in motion and being formed. And we are able to learn and adjust ourselves so that we can greet any new era, any new way of thinking, any new need of responding. We will already have been practicing the skills we need to have in the future. We will already be adapting our view on the basis not of what has been, but what is and is coming to be. So this is a period of time when we can anticipate what is coming to be. This is not the beginning of the age of Aquarius in the usual sense of that word, because again, a great age involves thousands of years, and the time between great ages is many hundreds of years. So it's not like we're going to wake up and say on May 25th, 2020, the age of Aquarius begins. It doesn't work that way. According to ancient sources, we are told that the shifts between the great ages always involves an overlap of a backward-looking humanity, a forward-looking humanity, and those who are in the present building the bridge forms, building the structures, and acting, in feeling, in thought, in response, to serve as the bridge between the dying old era and the not yet born new era. And so while this is one more indicator of the push into the new era, again, there are going to be many people who cling to the old ways because they were born in the materialistic age. They learned what they learned in the materialistic age, and they can't imagine an age where they're not hypnotized by the material creation. And yet, again, as I said earlier, there are millions of us around the world who understand life is one, who understand we are eternals having a human experience, and that we're here to try to be the highest we can be for as long as we are here, to keep learning and growing in our love and our wisdom and our ability to apply our intelligence. So again, we're at the gate, which leads to a whole different way of viewing matter, energy, life, time, potential. We are not bound to the past except as a failure of imagination. And centuries of materialism are now about to give way to centuries of interactivity and interrelatedness. Simply put, a better idea is on the way for the earth and all its creatures, humanity included. Just as the world of 1860 must have looked radically different than the world of 1800, so the world of 2040 will look radically different than the world of 1980. And just as a plant takes a very long time to grow from a seed to a fully developed plant able to put out flowers and fruit, so humanity has taken a very long time to grow from a fearful, desperate group of wild creatures, barely surviving, into a mutually supporting intelligence with the ability to bring forth miracles in nature. As with all species, some advance at a quicker rate than others. Some have a greater magnetic strength and freely offer it to the betterment of the world, while others are weaker spirits and are learning economy of energy as they absorb knowledge and experience from life and its interactions. We are on the threshold of the coming age of Aquarius. Again, the border between great ages is several hundred years. And through the gradual but inexorable changes, the planets show us what is and what is yet to come. The Grand Mutation, the conjunction at 1 degree Aquarius, is going to happen in December of 2020. However, the coming Grand Mutation will be heralded when Mars conjuncts Saturn at 1 degree of Aquarius in late March 2020, with Saturn on or near that degree between late March and the end of June next year. So the themes of the coming Jupiter-Saturn conjunction are already being set into motion March, April, and May, and June of next year. That's the dress rehearsal. That's where we get a forward-looking glimpse of things to come. And I would advise, be willing to mobilize. Be willing to mobilize. And that conjunction in late March with Mars and Saturn will generate the future pulse, which will be set into motion for 20 years when Jupiter conjuncts Saturn at 1 Aquarius in December of 2020. This will set structures into motion, which will help sprout the seeds of the Aquarian age when Pluto occupies the first degrees of Aquarius between 2023 and 2025. Again, that period marks the end of the winter of the 21st century and ushers in the spring of the 21st century, beginning a new way of living life in this era. So expect more efficient and visionary groups to form in the coming era, dedicated to coming together to make a better world for our children and grandchildren. We will understand the illusion of separateness and experience ourselves as the one human race we are. And because life is an endless journey from darkness to light and ignorance to knowledge and wisdom, we will all learn our power to shape our lives, to demonstrate our purpose for being on earth. Young or old, the new era will look radically different than the old. We are eternals having human experiences. The coming age will show us a higher synthesized view of life and the undreamed of possibilities of an enlightened humanity managing the earth and its resources to bring forth the greatest good for the greatest number. That's an effort worth joining. Almond blessings.
That was a fabulous lecture. Okay, it was like a fitting finale. So the final lecture, which kind of throws light into what lies ahead uh, in next 2.5 years or so, and not just 2.5 years, but 20 years, because Saturn Jupiter conjunction lasts. I mean, the cycle goes on for 20 years. And it was a very interesting lecture. I had a prelude to this lecture in your article itself. So, but I'm sure many people will enjoy this and take away a lot of things, both personally, philosophically, and also spiritually. So, thank you so much, Mr. Wilkinson, for presenting an amazing lecture, and thanks everyone for joining. Thank you all the speakers. Who were generous enough to come over and share their knowledge to the global forum. I'm sure not some of the, but most of the Western concepts are still completely alien to Indians, Indian astrologers and astrology enthusiasts from India. Likewise, I'm sure the Western astrologers and enthusiasts must have had some good insights from the Vedic lectures that were part of the symposium. So I trust the bridge has already started getting built, and I just hope things will continue from here for all good. And thank you so much, everyone.
Looking forward to the next one.
Absolutely. So I hope it will be, I mean, this is an information like I'm just thinking of doing this thrice a year. So I just need everyone's support and motivation.
Even once a year is Herculean. So if you can succeed in even getting 2 a year, you will have been earning your wings in heaven.
Okay, 2 or 3 times a year. So I'll see how it goes. And I'm sure people will come over to speak. And I know people will also be ready to listen to the amazing lectures. But I just think, so this is the first time, and I had 16 lectures arranged this time. But next time, I think like 10 to 12 will do good, and it will be the right number. So 16 seems to be a bit overwhelming. But still, for the first time, I think it was good. So I'm just grateful to everyone who have been part of this, who have spoke, and also who have joined at various lectures and have engaged themselves and also engaged us. So thank you so much, everyone. See you next time.
And these will be on the website?
I hope it will be there on the YouTube channel, but as long as it is not there on the YouTube channel, you can surely find on the Facebook page. It will be there on the Facebook page. So if you cannot find on the Facebook page, you will find it on my YouTube channel. So somewhere
very good.
You will, everyone will be having access to all the 16, at least 15 wonderful lectures, if not mine, because I'm sure I cannot vouch for myself. So I just hope someone else feels that lecture was valuable. So thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Wilkinson, and thanks all the speakers, and thank you, everyone. I'm sorry if I missed anyone. So it's not my own effort. It is a culmination of almost 20 to 25 people. Not, I mean, I have people help me who have not participated in the lecture. So it is so generous of them to kind of spend time and effort in advising me. So I'm just grateful to the astrological community for whatever it is giving me, and I hope I can give at least 2 or 3 times more than what I have. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.